Hello and welcome to the 9th episode of For Pete's Sake, the penultimate episode of the series, the ongoing series in which I go back through my dad's record collection one by one to get an idea of the kind of man he was and bring up some memories associated with those records. So last week I ended by choosing an album called 4 by the Stranglers. Now what's happened here is the Stranglers have done an absolute number on me, which is surprising seeing as we've never met. But this is the album cover. You'll see it says the Stranglers, and then at the bottom it says 4 in Roman numerals. So I don't know much about the Stranglers, and I thought that meant that this album was called 4 and was probably their 4th album. It turns out that is not the case. I'm just going to read from the Wikipedia page for this album now. It says, the Stranglers 4 prefix was a deliberate attempt by the band to cause confusion. The release title is actually Rattus Norvegicus, which is Latin for brown rat. So they have caused confusion, and what they've done is later in the career they did release an album actually called 4 in Roman numerals, which was an American only release, and it was a compilation. So I didn't know any of that stuff, so I listened to what I thought was the album that I'd chosen. Twice I listened to it, and it's not very good, and it wasn't even the right album, it turns out. That was something else. So this album is not called 4. My dad doesn't own an album called 4 by the Stranglers. He owns this one, Rattus Norvegicus. The actual album title is there on the back. Now what I remember most about this one growing up is a couple of songs that, in fact I'll get into the songs later, but the thing I remember most about it is looking at this cover and being genuinely really frightened by these men. Hopefully you can see the guys there, the Stranglers themselves. So the picture of them looking menacing and quite unlike anyone I'd seen before, probably combined with these kind of scary animal heads and the Stranglers on the top, made quite an impression on me. And then on the back you've also got the rat. So I can distinctly remember looking at this album and being frightened of it, which is quite funny looking back. I was a sensitive soul though, it should be said. I think this is because one of my early introductions to, not horror as such, but something that was horror adjacent, was the film Oliver, and I was always scared of, what's his name, the guy who kills Nancy, great content again, Bill Sikes. I was always scared of Bill Sikes, and these guys to me all look like Bill Sikes at different points in his life perhaps. So yeah, I used to be genuinely frightened of this album. Anyway, when I did get around to listening to the correct album, to actually listening to this album, which was only this morning, I've listened to it twice through today, which is quite a big inconvenience for me. So the Stranglers, as I say, have really done a number on me there. But yeah, so when I got around to listening to it, it's great. It's the debut album, it turns out. It's really good. Like most people, I imagine, I only know 3 Stranglers songs, and that is Golden Brown, Peaches, and No More Heroes. And only one of those songs is on this album, and that is Peaches. So the 4 songs that I have chosen to talk about on this album are track 5, Hanging Around, which is a song about the characters that they met in the London pub scene. They're a band that are often known as pub rock, which is a weird kind of subgenre that only really exists in the 70s. And includes other bands like I guess Squeeze and the band that Wilco Johnson was in, whose name escapes me right now. But yeah, that's imagine I'd love to be in a band and people are like, oh, what genre are you? Oh, pub rock. We just do pubs. We rock in the pub. Brilliant. And what it actually means, it's quite ill-defined really. It doesn't really mean anything. It's just kind of post-punky, kind of raw sounds often recorded live to capture that kind of live feel of playing in like tiny pubs and stuff like that. You don't really have it in modern day music. I think the Rifles are a band I would describe as pub rock. When I say modern day, their debut album was released nearly 20 years ago, which tells you where I am in terms of describing something as modern. Okay, so the other one I wanted to pick up on was of course Peaches, which is one of the most iconic bass lines of all time. And like most iconic either bass lines or guitar riffs, it's very simple, but it's just incredibly effective and it's instantly recognisable, and it's a fantastic song. And it features prominently in the film Sexy Beast, which I would highly recommend if you like gangster films or British crime films. So Peaches is a classic, that's the one that everyone will know. And then there is one called Get a Grip on Yourself, which I didn't think I knew. But then when it came on, I could remember my dad playing it and singing along to it, which was really, really lovely. I was running actually through the woods. I was on a run for exercise. I wasn't like being chased or anything like that. But I was running and I was listening to that song, and when the chorus kicked in, I was like, oh man, I can remember my dad singing that. Sorry, I keep glancing up here because I've stuck a blind up to make the light a bit less imposing, and it keeps threatening to fall down. It's just a metaphor for the entire thing, really, isn't it? Okay. And then finally, I wanted to talk about the last song, which is a medley called Down in the Sewer, and it's made up of 4 parts. Although it's only one track, it's just got 4 parts to it, a bit like the Beatles did at the end of Let It Be or Abbey Road. So Down in the Sewer is like a 7-minute track, which is very unusual for the Stranglers and for any of the post-punk bands around at that time, or indeed the punk bands. Were still kind of in the midst of the punk scene in 1977 when this was released. My dad was 20 at the time, by the way. Yeah, it's really good. It moves in between different styles, and it's a really nice album closer, and it ends in a suitably epic way. And I'll tell you what really annoyed me when I looked on Spotify. So if you go on Spotify and you look up this album, Rattus Norvegicus, it doesn't end with Down in the Sewer like it does on the original album. It has like 5 other songs at the end, because the version on Spotify is a 1996 remaster, but that's the only version on Spotify. And if you'll indulge me while I become an old man shouting at clouds for a moment, I hate the fact that now, if you are listening to it streaming, is the definitive version, that is just what the album is, and it doesn't close with the song that the band intended it to close on. It closes on something else. Now for me, especially at this time in music, maybe not in the last 20 years or so, but an album used to be something that was created by the people who by the creatives involved, and it was supposed to be a cohesive beginning, middle and end thing, sequenced in a way that is done on purpose. So if you take that on streaming and change it and mess around with it, you're not just kind of messing with the original artistic vision of what the band wanted, but you're also rewriting history. So now that becomes the only version that anyone is aware of. And I've seen this on Spotify before. I've also seen where I've gone on albums that I own and there's like a track missing, or the track list is slightly different, and it might seem like a small thing, but I don't like how, as I say, that now becomes the version that everyone is aware of. I don't like that. I mean, there are bigger concerns in the world, some would say, but it does bother me. Yeah, so this one doesn't have a price on it or anything like that, but I'm glad that when I was a kid, I never looked at the inner sleeve, because if I was frightened by that, which I was, imagine if I'd seen this. Look at these guys, terrifying. It's like something out of a horror film or something. Awful. I'm sure they're all lovely gentlemen. Although one of them did change his name from like something like Dave Smith to Jet Black. That was the drummer. So make of that what you will. Good. Can't get it in now, obviously. I'm just going to put it down, probably. Yeah. It is a good album though, joking aside, it is a genuinely good album, top to bottom, really, really, it's only like half an hour, 35 minutes, something like that, like a lot of these albums were at this time, and if you like The Doors, then you will love this album. It's just like a punky version of The Doors, there's lots of keyboard in it, loads of keyboard solos as you get with the Stranglers. It's really good album. So to finish off, I've got nothing from my record collection this week, because as I record this, it is Ledger weekend, I've mentioned on a previous episode how much my dad loved horse racing, so I wanted to talk a little bit about my memories of Leisure Weekend from the past. So I never got into horse racing, but it was always an excuse to go for a beer with my dad and his mates in the last 5 or 6 years of his life, I guess. Maybe longer, last 10 years of his life, actually. So, because I knew that he would be out. I knew that Leisure Weekend, he would be out every day. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he'd be out all of them. So I would meet up with him at least one day, normally a couple of days. He'd go into the pub that I worked, the Tut and Shive, and when I finished my shift, I'd stay out with him. But I also remember on a Thursday a couple of times going to meet him straight after work. I can remember meeting him in the Black Bull, in the cricket club, in the railway. My wife was there for that one. So yeah, I distinctly remember, I've got really happy memories of going to meet up with my dad and his mates on Leisure Weekend and enjoying a few beers. But the flip side is, I wanted to talk a bit about, like, as a boy and then a man, like, spending time with your dad's mates. It's such a weird dynamic because my dad acted totally differently around his mates than he did with me. And I saw a side of him that I never saw at any other time. My dad's from Barnsley and he had a fairly broad Yorkshire accent. But when he was with his mates, it's like he started speaking a completely different language. It was all thee and thou and all that stuff, which he never did at any other time. And then, because they went back years and years and years, I think they'd gone to school together, most of them. They had all these like private in-jokes and things that I didn't know about. And it's weird, like with someone who you're so close with, suddenly there's a whole part of his life that you just don't really know about. And even though my dad's mates were lovely, and I like all of them, I really get on with them, and also a couple of them were really, really there for him at the end. All of them were, but a couple of them really were coming to the hospice every day and stuff like that, and I really appreciated that, and I know that he did. So that's really nice. So, but when you're like a teenager, or even in your early 20s, it's really intimidating, like spending time with your dad's mates. And it's, as I say, it's a strange dynamic because it changes the dynamic between them as well, the way that they speak to each other, because I guess they're kind of not on the best behaviour, far from it, but perhaps not as kind of open as they would be normally with each other. And I wonder, like, was it a drag for them, me being there, with like, oh, you know, not that I can't wait for him to go, but we can properly let our hair down after Rob's gone or whatever, because I want to stay out with him all night. Maybe not, I don't know. It's hard, isn't it? It's easy to get in your head with that kind of stuff. But whenever I see him now, which I do from very occasionally, I'll bump into one of my dad's mates, and it's always great to see him, and you know, they're very warm with each other and stuff. Because as I say, these are guys who I went for a beer with like 10, 15 times, maybe, you know, at least. And I served him behind the bar literally hundreds of times. They won't remember most of that though. So yeah, I just wanted to use this time, rather than bang on about one of my own records from my collection, to just reflect on my memories of Leisure Weekend. And in later episodes I'm going to talk more about my memories of my dad and the Tut and Shive, and more about my memories of my dad at the racecourse, but they're going to be separate episodes that are probably going to be next season now. So I think that's pretty much it. So the Stranglers Rattus Norvegicus, not 4, as it's not known, so thanks for that, the Stranglers. So let's pick next week's lineup. Is it a lineup if it's one thing? Who knows? This will be the last one in the series actually, so hopefully it's a good one. Let's see. So I'm going to get the wheel up now. Angle that a bit, see if you can see it. Last week it didn't even come up at all, but hopefully that's enough angling so that you can see what it is. Oh, interesting. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and the album is Deja Vu, which my dad has 2 copies of for some reason. Maybe one of them's my mum's. That'll be great. I'm looking forward to that. I'm a big Neil Young fan, but I've never really listened to much of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. But I know that that's an iconic album. Smashing. Right, so back next week for the last episode in this series of For Pete's Sake. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time. Thank you.